Life often feels like an endless list of worries. Our health, our finances, our children, our regrets, our future. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that we must fix, improve, and care about everything. But what if that very mindset, the constant need to care, is what makes us miserable in the first place? That's the bold idea behind The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fucket by Mark Manson. Though the title may sound brash, the heart of the message is surprisingly gentle. It's not about being careless or rude. It's about learning how to care wisely. It's a guide to emotional simplicity in a noisy, overwhelming world. Manson starts by challenging one of society's biggest myths, the belief that we must always be positive. Everywhere we look, we're told to think happy thoughts, stay motivated, or be our best selves. But what happens when life doesn't play along? When illness strikes, when loved ones disappoint us, or when dreams crumble? Constant positivity starts to feel fake, even exhausting. According to Manson, the key isn't to force happiness, it's to accept that pain, frustration, and imperfection are natural parts of being alive. Instead of running from problems, he suggests we choose which problems are worth our energy. We don't have unlimited time, and we certainly don't have unlimited fucks to give, so it's time to spend them wisely. He uses humor and brutal honesty to make his point. For instance, he argues that trying to be special often leads to the opposite, insecurity. The more we chase success, the more we notice what we don't have. The more we demand happiness, the more unhappy we become. True peace, he says, comes not from chasing more, but from accepting less. Fewer expectations, fewer comparisons, and fewer false ideals. The book's tone is straightforward, but beneath the sharp language lies a deep sense of compassion. Manson isn't encouraging apathy, he's encouraging clarity. By caring less about what doesn't matter, the gossip, the approval, the endless pursuit of being enough, we make room for what truly does: love, purpose, and genuine connection. For older readers, this idea might feel like wisdom rediscovered, the kind that comes from living long enough to realize that not every hill is worth dying on. Life teaches us that peace often comes not from getting more, but from letting go. So as we step into this journey, think of it not as a manual for rebellion, but as a quiet invitation to rest, to free ourselves from the weight of unnecessary worry. Because once you stop caring about everything, you finally have space to care about the things that really count. And just when you think you've understood what it means to not care, the next chapter will turn that idea on its head, revealing why the struggle itself is what gives life meaning.
We've been told for decades that happiness is the ultimate goal, that life should always feel good, that we should avoid discomfort at all costs. From television ads promising joy in a bottle to social media feeds showing perfect lives, we've been sold the idea that feeling bad means something's wrong with us. But Mark Manson argues the opposite. The more we chase constant happiness, the less happy we actually become. This is what he calls the happiness trap. It's a never-ending cycle of wanting, achieving, and still feeling empty. You buy a new car, and soon it's just another car. You reach a goal and immediately set a new one. We adapt so quickly to comfort that satisfaction never lasts. Manson compares this to the feedback loop from hell, when we start worrying about the fact that we're worrying or getting anxious about being anxious. The loop feeds itself, leaving us drained. So, what's the solution? Paradoxically, it's accepting the discomfort. Manson believes that life's struggles give it texture and meaning. Without challenges, there's no growth. Without pain, there's no appreciation for joy. Think about how much we value our health after being ill, or how deeply we cherish peace after chaos. Suffering isn't the enemy, it's the teacher. For many of us, especially those who've lived through decades of change, this idea might feel familiar. We've seen wars, recessions, heartbreaks, and recoveries. Looking back, it's often the hard times that shaped us the most. We learned patience, empathy, and gratitude, not from smooth sailing, but from the storms. Manson's message here is simple but powerful. Stop expecting happiness to be permanent. It's not meant to be. Life is a series of waves: joy, sorrow, calm, and chaos. Trying to freeze the happy moments is like trying to hold water in your hands. Instead, we should focus on choosing which waves are worth riding. This approach takes pressure off us. We no longer need to fix every negative feeling or pretend everything's fine. We can simply say, yes, life is hard sometimes, and that's okay. In doing so, we reclaim our emotional balance. In the end, happiness isn't found by erasing problems, but by facing the right ones. It's not about always feeling good. It's about being comfortable with feeling bad when it's necessary, because only then do we grow, connect, and find what truly matters. Manson invites readers to stop chasing endless positivity and start embracing reality, raw, unfiltered, and sometimes uncomfortable. That's where freedom begins. And just when this truth starts to settle, the next part will show why the secret to meaning isn't in escaping pain, but in choosing which pain is worth enduring.
Every person, no matter how rich, kind, or lucky, carries a share of pain. It might come through illness, loss, rejection, or disappointment. Mark Manson argues that suffering is not just inevitable, it's necessary. But the difference between a fulfilled life and a miserable one lies in what we choose to suffer for. Most of us spend our lives trying to avoid discomfort. We want the reward without the struggle, the fit body without the workouts, the wealth without the years of saving, the love without the risk of heartbreak. But Manson turns this logic upside down. He says we should stop asking, "What do I want from life?" and start asking, "What am I willing to struggle for?" Because that's where real happiness begins. He shares an example. Everyone says they want success, but few want the long nights, the failures, and the uncertainty that come with it. Similarly, everyone wants a great relationship, but not everyone wants the hard conversations, patience, and vulnerability required to build one. The truth is, your life's quality isn't defined by what you enjoy. It's defined by what pain you're willing to endure. Think about it. Over the years, you've likely faced countless hardships: raising children, losing loved ones, facing health scares, or adapting to change. Yet through all of that, you discovered strength you didn't know you had. That's what Manson means. It's not about escaping problems, but finding the ones worth facing, the struggles that lead to growth, connection, and purpose. He points out that most unhappiness comes from chasing the wrong struggles, the ones society tells us to pursue. We stress about being more successful than others, about looking younger, or keeping appearances. But none of these bring lasting peace. The moment we achieve one, another replaces it. It's an endless treadmill of comparison. Instead, Manson encourages choosing values that come from within: honesty, responsibility, and humility, rather than chasing external validation. When your values are solid, your struggles become meaningful. For example, caring for a sick spouse is hard, but it's rooted in love. Saving money for your grandkids may take sacrifice, but it's built on purpose.
These are struggles that fill life with depth rather than emptiness. And when you consciously choose your struggles, pain transforms into progress. It becomes a sign that you're investing in something worthwhile. That's a radical shift, from seeing suffering as a curse to viewing it as a companion on the road to meaning. So the real question isn't whether you'll suffer, because you will. The real question is, what is your pain worth? And as we move forward, Manson reveals an even deeper truth, that taking responsibility for your choices, even when life feels unfair, is where your personal power truly begins.
One of Mark Manson's boldest ideas is that responsibility is the key to freedom. At first, that sounds like a contradiction. We often think of responsibility as a burden, something heavy we're forced to carry. But Manson flips the script. Taking responsibility for our lives, even for things that aren't our fault, gives us power. It puts us back in control. He explains the difference between fault and responsibility. Fault is about the past, something that has already happened. Responsibility is about the present, how we respond to it. You may not be at fault for being born into hardship, for losing your job, or for someone betraying your trust, but you are responsible for what you do next. Blame keeps us stuck. Responsibility moves us forward. This lesson resonates deeply with those who've lived long enough to see how unpredictable life can be. We've all faced moments when things went wrong for reasons beyond our control. But the people who recover best aren't the ones who play the victim. They're the ones who decide, all right, this is mine to handle. They stop waiting for someone to fix things and start working with what they have. Manson gives a simple example. Imagine being rear-ended in traffic. It wasn't your fault, but you still have to deal with the consequences. Calling insurance, arranging repairs, managing your day. Complaining doesn't solve it. Taking responsibility does. The same rule applies to life. We can't choose everything that happens, but we can always choose our attitude toward it. This shift in mindset builds emotional resilience. When we stop blaming others, we stop giving them power over us. We no longer say, "He made me angry," or "They ruined my day." Instead, we recognize that while others may influence us, we decide how to respond. That's real freedom, not being controlled by the world, but being steady within it. Manson also warns that avoiding responsibility can make us miserable. The more we try to escape accountability through excuses, denial, or blaming others, the weaker we become. Responsibility might feel heavy at first, but over time, it strengthens us like exercise strengthens muscles. It's not punishment, it's empowerment. He argues that people who take full responsibility tend to live calmer, more meaningful lives. They accept their limitations, but make the most of what they can control. They understand that every choice, big or small, shapes the story of who they are. And when life gets difficult, they remind themselves, "This is my story, and I choose how it unfolds." Taking responsibility doesn't mean taking blame for everything. It means choosing how to grow from it. That's what makes us emotionally mature and deeply alive. In the next part, Manson explores why our constant desire to be special or extraordinary often leads us away from happiness, and how embracing our ordinary selves might just be the secret to peace.
In a world obsessed with being the best, Mark Manson delivers a refreshing, almost shocking truth. Most of us are not extraordinary, and that's okay. In fact, trying too hard to be special often makes us miserable. We live in an age that glorifies fame, wealth, and perfection. Everywhere we turn, someone seems to be doing better, living larger, or achieving more. And when we measure our lives against that, we feel small, invisible, or unworthy. But Manson reminds us that life's beauty doesn't come from being exceptional.
It comes from being real. He says, the desire for an extraordinary life is what keeps so many ordinary people miserable. That's because the moment we believe we must be special, we set ourselves up for endless disappointment. There will always be someone younger, richer, or more talented. It's a race without a finish line. For older generations, this truth may ring familiar. Decades ago, people didn't need to stand out to feel valuable. They simply did what needed to be done, raised families, built communities, and cared for others. There was quiet pride in ordinary lives well lived. Manson is calling us back to that wisdom. He explains that the obsession with being special is rooted in insecurity. When we constantly seek recognition, we're actually trying to fill a hole inside us, a fear that we're not enough. But the irony is, once we stop trying to prove our worth, we finally start to feel it. When you accept that you're ordinary, you're free to focus on what truly matters: love, laughter, learning, and the small joys that make life whole. Manson also points out that being average doesn't mean being meaningless. It means understanding that our happiness doesn't depend on outshining others. In fact, ordinary life often holds the deepest pleasures: a warm meal, a quiet walk, the company of those we care about. These moments don't need applause. They just need presence. He encourages readers to redefine success. Instead of chasing fame or perfection, success could simply mean being honest, dependable, and kind. It could mean finding satisfaction in contributing quietly rather than shining loudly. Because when we let go of the pressure to be extraordinary, we make peace with who we are, and that peace is priceless. Manson's message isn't about settling. It's about freeing ourselves from endless comparison. It's about realizing that ordinary doesn't mean insignificant. It means authentic. And in a world full of noise and ego, authenticity is a rare and precious thing. So instead of asking, how can I be special? Maybe the better question is, how can I be genuine? Because the ordinary life, lived honestly, might just be the most extraordinary thing of all. And in the next part, Manson dives deeper into one of life's hardest truths, that no matter how much we wish otherwise, we are all going to die. But facing that reality, rather than fearing it, may be the key to truly living.
Most people avoid thinking about death. It's uncomfortable, frightening, and full of unknowns. But Mark Manson argues that accepting death is one of the most powerful things we can do for our happiness and peace of mind. The moment we face our own mortality honestly, we start to see life differently, and we finally begin to live it fully. He explains that much of our anxiety and stress come from pretending that life will last forever. We fill our days with distractions, achievements, and possessions as if we can outsmart time. But when we pause and remember that our time is limited, something inside us shifts. The noise quiets. The things that truly matter, love, kindness, purpose, and presence, rise to the surface. Manson shares stories of people who discovered deeper meaning after facing their mortality, through illness, loss, or tragedy. When the illusion of forever breaks, our priorities realign. Suddenly, the petty arguments, social comparisons, and endless worrying lose their grip. We start asking bigger questions. What kind of person do I want to be? What legacy will I leave behind? For older readers, this reflection often feels natural. With age comes a clearer understanding that time is precious. Looking back, many realized the most meaningful parts of life weren't the awards, the possessions, or the recognition, but the moments of connection, the laughter shared, the small acts of love that ripple quietly through generations. Manson reminds us that facing death doesn't lead to despair, it leads to freedom. When you accept that everything ends,
You stop wasting time on what doesn't matter. You stop holding grudges, chasing approval, or clinging to fears. Instead, you start to live with intention. You speak your truth more freely, love more deeply, and let go more easily. He puts it beautifully. You can't truly live until you're aware of your own death. Once we understand that each day is borrowed time, life becomes richer. Even the simplest things, morning sunlight, a warm conversation, the smell of rain, take on a sacred quality. Death, instead of being an enemy, becomes a reminder to live sincerely. The great irony is that we spend so much of our lives trying to avoid thinking about death, but in doing so, we miss out on truly living. Manson encourages us to keep mortality close, not as a dark shadow, but as a gentle compass pointing us toward what matters. In the end, it's not about fearing the end, it's about appreciating the journey. Life is short, but meaning doesn't depend on length, it depends on depth. And as we move into the next part, Manson explores why the values we choose, what we decide to measure our lives by, can either bring peace or create endless suffering.
Mark Manson believes that the quality of your life depends on the quality of your values, the invisible standards by which you measure success, happiness, and self-worth. Most of our suffering, he says, doesn't come from life itself, but from measuring it by the wrong yardsticks. We live in a world obsessed with numbers. How many followers we have, how much money we make, how young we look, how many achievements we can list. These are what Manson calls bad values because they depend on things outside of our control. The more we base our worth on external approval, the more fragile it becomes. When the praise stops, the confidence crumbles. Good values, on the other hand, are internal, rooted in things we can control: honesty, kindness, perseverance, responsibility, curiosity. These values lead to peace rather than anxiety. If your value is honesty, you can practice it every day, regardless of what others think. If your value is growth, you'll see even failure as part of the journey. Good values are steady, bad ones shift with the crowd. Manson explains that much of human frustration comes from trying to live by someone else's values, society's, our parents, or even our friends. We chase the goals others have set for us, hoping they'll bring happiness, only to find emptiness at the end. But when we choose our own values consciously, life feels lighter. We begin to act with purpose rather than pressure. He encourages us to ask, what do I truly care about? What do I want my life to stand for? These are not easy questions, but they're necessary ones. For many people, especially later in life, this reflection brings a sense of calm clarity. You start to realize that it's not too late to redefine what success means. Maybe it's not about what you have, but who you've helped. Not about what you've achieved, but how kindly you've lived. Manson also points out that good values make decision-making easier. When you know what matters most, you stop wasting energy on things that don't align. You say no more confidently, worry less about opinions, and live more authentically. One of his most powerful lines is, "You can't choose not to care. You can only choose what to care about." That single choice, deciding what deserves your attention, shapes everything else. For older generations, this might feel like a return to wisdom we've always known, but often forget. That integrity matters more than image, that peace is worth more than possessions, and that a clear conscience is a luxury money can't buy. When we measure our lives by healthy, enduring values, suffering becomes more meaningful, even beautiful, because it's connected to something that lasts. In the next part, Manson digs into how our beliefs and certainty can sometimes trap us, and why learning to doubt ourselves might be one of the healthiest habits of all.
Humans naturally crave certainty. We like clear answers, neat solutions, and a sense that the world is predictable. But Mark Manson argues that certainty can actually limit our growth and happiness. When we cling too tightly to what we think we know, we close ourselves off to new perspectives, learning, and deeper understanding. He points out that many people live in what he calls the comfort of certainty. They assume they are always right, that their beliefs are absolute, or that their way of living is the only correct path. This mindset may feel safe, but it often leads to frustration, defensiveness, and unnecessary conflict. When life inevitably challenges these certainties, the resulting stress can feel unbearable. Manson encourages what might feel counterintuitive. Doubt yourself. Question your assumptions, beliefs, and even your desires. This doesn't mean abandoning your values or becoming indecisive. Instead, it's about cultivating flexibility and humility. By accepting that you don't have all the answers, you open yourself to growth, change, and more meaningful connections. For seniors, this message resonates particularly well. Life teaches us that our perspective is shaped by experience, but no one sees the whole picture. Even decades of living cannot guarantee complete understanding. Recognizing our limits can bring a surprising sense of freedom. We stop fighting the inevitable and start learning to navigate it with grace. Manson also warns against tying our self-worth to our beliefs. When we feel that being wrong makes us less valuable, we resist change and cling desperately to certainty. But when we separate our identity from our ideas, we can adapt without fear. We can listen, reflect, and adjust, all signs of emotional maturity. This willingness to embrace uncertainty also improves relationships. We begin to see others not as threats or obstacles, but as individuals with their own valid perspectives. Discussions become opportunities for understanding, rather than battles to prove a point. Life becomes richer, not because it becomes easier, but because we approach it with openness instead of rigid expectations. Manson emphasizes that growth comes from discomfort and challenge, not from staying in the safety of certainty. It's the willingness to question, learn, and occasionally be wrong that shapes character and deepens wisdom. In a sense, uncertainty is not a weakness, it's a doorway to freedom. Next, Manson explores the idea of failure, not as something to fear, but as a necessary step toward progress and meaning in life.
Failure is a word most of us try to avoid. From an early age, we are taught that mistakes are shameful, setbacks are embarrassing, and success is the ultimate goal. Mark Manson challenges this belief. He argues that failure is not the opposite of success. It is the pathway to it. In fact, avoiding failure often keeps us from achieving anything meaningful at all. Manson emphasizes that growth is rarely smooth. Every skill we acquire, every meaningful relationship we build, and every personal transformation we experience comes with effort, trial, and yes, failure. Those moments when things don't go as planned are not punishments, they are lessons. Each mistake teaches us something valuable about ourselves, our limits, and our choices. For older readers, this perspective may feel reassuring. Life's setbacks, lost opportunities, regrets, or unfulfilled dreams aren't signs of inadequacy. They are proof that we dared to act, to care, to engage with the world. The key, Manson suggests, is not to fear failure, but to choose the failures that matter. Put your energy into challenges that align with your values, and view mistakes as necessary stepping stones, not personal defeats. Manson also critiques the cultural obsession with being perfect or flawless. When people avoid failure at all costs, they often end up stagnant, anxious, and disconnected from reality. Perfectionism is exhausting and ultimately unfulfilling. By embracing the inevitability of failure, we free ourselves to take meaningful risks, to try, learn, and grow without constant fear. A crucial part of this approach is learning to detach your sense of self-worth from outcomes. Failing doesn't make you less valuable. It makes you human. Older adults often understand this instinctively, having navigated life's ups and downs. The trick is to intentionally recognize that each failure is a teacher, and that the courage to continue defines strength, not the absence of mistakes. Manson also points out that failure becomes even more useful when paired with reflection. Simply failing is not enough. We must examine why, adjust our approach, and try again. This iterative process fosters resilience and wisdom. Over time, those who embrace failure cultivate confidence that is steady, realistic, and deeply satisfying. Ultimately, Manson reframes the story of failure. It is not something to dread, but a sign that we are engaged with life in meaningful ways. Avoiding failure may feel safe, but it limits growth. Choosing the right failures, learning from them, and persisting despite setbacks is what leads to fulfillment, purpose, and true freedom. And in the next part, Manson turns to responsibility once more. This time, the responsibility of choosing what we care about and how it shapes our freedom and peace.
Earlier, Mark Manson emphasized the power of responsibility, taking charge of your actions, decisions, and responses. In this part, he digs deeper, showing that the real freedom in life comes from choosing what to care about. After all, we all have a limited amount of time, energy, and attention. How we spend it determines our happiness, peace, and sense of purpose. Manson explains that people often waste enormous energy caring about things that ultimately don't matter. The opinions of strangers, societal expectations, minor slights, or the endless pursuit of material status. These bad cares drain us and lead to unnecessary stress. In contrast, when we focus on values that are meaningful, our struggles become purposeful and our lives gain depth. The concept is simple but powerful. You can't not care. You can only decide what to care about. Life forces us to make choices. We can't give a fuck about everything, and trying to do so leads to exhaustion, disappointment, and resentment. By consciously selecting what truly matters, we regain control over our emotions, priorities, and ultimately, our lives. For older readers, this principle may resonate strongly. Over decades of experience, many realize that most worries were trivial, and that the things that brought joy, pride, and peace were far simpler: kindness, honesty, family, curiosity, and moments of connection. By deliberately aligning our cares with enduring values, we focus on what brings satisfaction instead of chasing illusions of success or social approval. Manson also highlights a common pitfall. People often think caring less means apathy. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It requires courage to decide where to invest your energy. Caring wisely is a skill, one that demands reflection, self-honesty, and sometimes letting go of relationships, habits, or pursuits that no longer serve you. It's not detachment, it's discernment. He shares examples of individuals who took responsibility for their choices, even under difficult circumstances. By concentrating their energy on what truly mattered, they turned challenges into opportunities and setbacks into lessons. Life became less chaotic because the unnecessary noise no longer controlled them. Ultimately, the act of choosing your cares is liberating. It transforms life from a reactive struggle, constantly responding to external pressures, into a proactive journey. We stop being victims of circumstance and start being architects of meaning. Every care we pick is a building block of our values, our character, and our fulfillment. And as we move to the next part, Manson explores the hidden dangers of entitlement and how accepting limitations can transform frustration into satisfaction and contentment.
Mark Manson warns that one of the most common traps in life is entitlement, the belief that we deserve special treatment, success, or happiness simply by existing. Entitlement, he argues, is the root of much frustration, resentment, and disappointment. People who feel entitled are constantly dissatisfied because reality rarely matches their expectations. Entitlement creates a mindset where we blame others for our problems. I didn't get that promotion because they don't appreciate me. Or, life is unfair, so I shouldn't have to struggle. While it's natural to feel disappointment, Manson emphasizes that constantly seeing yourself as a victim steals your power. Instead of taking action, you focus on grievances, and happiness slips further out of reach. He introduces the concept of limitations as the antidote to entitlement. Life is inherently limited in time, energy, and opportunities. Accepting these limits is liberating. You may not be the richest, the fastest, or the most admired, but you can still find meaning and satisfaction within the boundaries you have. Limitation teaches focus, patience, and humility. Manson also discusses the paradox of control. Many people believe they can control everything in their lives, from others' behavior to life's outcomes. Entitlement reinforces this illusion. The truth is, we can control only our choices, responses, and effort. Recognizing this distinction is vital for emotional maturity and inner peace. For older adults, this lesson often resonates through experience. Life teaches us that disappointment is inevitable, that setbacks will come, and that external validation is fleeting. The most content people aren't those who demanded the world bend to their will, but those who worked within reality, adapted, and found satisfaction in what they could influence. Manson also emphasizes responsibility paired with acceptance. While we should act to improve our circumstances, we must accept what we cannot change. This balance prevents bitterness. Responsibility empowers action. Acceptance prevents futile struggle. Together, they create a grounded, resilient approach to life. Ultimately, rejecting entitlement and embracing limits doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing battles wisely, caring about what truly matters, and finding contentment in a life that is imperfect yet deeply meaningful. It transforms frustration into clarity, stress into focus, and desire into fulfillment. In the next part, Manson explores the importance of honesty, brutal, self-reflective honesty, and how facing our truths can liberate us from needless suffering.
Mark Manson stresses that honesty, especially with ourselves, is one of the most powerful tools for a fulfilling life. Many of us live with illusions, stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we deserve, or how much control we have. These self-deceptions may feel comforting, but in the long run, they are the source of frustration, disappointment, and regret. He argues that people often avoid self-reflection because it can be uncomfortable. It's easier to blame others, avoid responsibility, or pretend life is fair. But without confronting our own behaviors, mistakes, and motives, we remain trapped in cycles of suffering. Radical honesty, Manson says, is not about cruelty or confessing every thought. It's about being clear and truthful about your own choices and limitations. For example, someone might complain about being stuck in an unfulfilling job while secretly refusing to change their situation. The truth is uncomfortable. They are responsible for their choices, even if circumstances are difficult. Admitting this is not shameful. It is freeing. It allows us to take action rather than wasting energy on resentment or excuses.
Manson also points out that honesty strengthens relationships. When we are truthful about our feelings, desires, and boundaries, we create deeper, more authentic connections. Pretending or hiding only builds distance. For older adults, this can be especially meaningful. Decades of experience often teach that real intimacy comes from authenticity, not from perfection or pretense. Another key point is that radical honesty aligns with our values. When we are truthful, we stop bending ourselves to meet others' expectations. We focus our energy on what aligns with our internal standards, not external pressures. This honesty is a form of self-respect, a declaration that our own understanding of right, wrong, and meaningful living matters. Manson reminds readers that honesty requires courage. Facing the truth about yourself can be uncomfortable, even painful. But this discomfort is temporary. The freedom and clarity gained are lasting. By acknowledging our weaknesses, mistakes, and limitations, we gain control over them. We stop being passive participants in our lives and start steering our own course. Ultimately, radical honesty is a cornerstone of meaningful living. It frees us from illusions, strengthens our relationships, and empowers us to align our lives with values that truly matter. It may not make life easy, but it makes it authentic, intentional, and deeply satisfying. In the next part, Manson explains why rejection is not a failure, but a crucial tool for defining your values and shaping the life you want to lead.
Mark Manson emphasizes that rejection is not something to fear. It's a vital tool for living a meaningful life. Many people spend decades trying to please everyone, avoid conflict, and gain universal approval. But in reality, this is impossible. Trying to satisfy all expectations leaves us exhausted, frustrated, and disconnected from our true selves. Rejection is the natural outcome of setting boundaries, of choosing what matters to us and what doesn't. When we say no to some things, we create space to say yes to others. This may include people, opportunities, habits, or commitments. By embracing rejection, we clarify our values and direct our energy toward what aligns with them. Manson points out that much of our discomfort comes from fearing disapproval. We worry that if someone criticizes us, leaves us, or disagrees, it reflects on our worth. But this mindset is flawed. Other people's reactions often say more about them than about us. Accepting this allows us to pursue our priorities without constant anxiety about judgment. For older readers, this lesson may resonate strongly. Over a lifetime, many have experienced the relief and clarity that comes from saying no. Whether declining a social obligation, refusing unrealistic demands, or stepping away from a toxic relationship. Rejection, when understood as a natural boundary-setting process, becomes empowering rather than hurtful. Manson also explains that choosing what to reject is as important as choosing what to accept. Every decision carries consequences, and focusing on what truly matters requires conscious trade-offs. You can't care about everything, and trying to do so will only lead to frustration. When we embrace this reality, life becomes simpler, calmer, and more focused. Another insight is that rejection teaches resilience. Experiencing disappointment, criticism, or loss builds emotional strength. It reminds us that life will not always bend to our desires, and that's not only normal, it's necessary. Learning to accept rejection gracefully is a sign of maturity, self-respect, and independence. Ultimately, Manson reframes rejection as a positive filter. It clarifies your values, strengthens your resolve, and allows you to focus on what genuinely brings meaning and fulfillment. By letting go of what doesn't serve you, life becomes lighter, freer, and richer. Next, Manson explores how commitment in relationships, work, and personal growth paradoxically brings freedom rather than restriction.
At first glance, commitment may seem like a restriction. Committing to a relationship,
A career or a personal goal appears to limit your options, tie you down, and reduce freedom. But Mark Manson presents a counterintuitive idea. True freedom comes from commitment, not avoidance. He explains that when we commit to something meaningful, we give our time, energy, and focus to a purpose that aligns with our values. In doing so, we create structure, clarity, and direction. Instead of drifting endlessly, we invest in what matters, and that investment brings deep satisfaction. For example, a committed relationship isn't a cage. It's a framework for trust, intimacy, and growth. A committed career isn't a trap. It's a canvas to develop skills, contribute, and leave a mark. Commitment channels our energy, reduces anxiety over endless choices, and turns effort into results. Manson contrasts commitment with avoidance. People who avoid commitment often chase novelty, comfort, or approval, thinking it will bring happiness. But this leads to shallow experiences, constant dissatisfaction, and a lack of purpose. Without commitment, even success can feel empty because it is not connected to enduring values. Older readers may recognize this truth through life experience. Years of raising families, building careers, or cultivating friendships reveal that depth and meaning come from dedication, not casual interest. The sacrifices and discipline required often feel heavy at first, but the rewards, stability, respect, and genuine fulfillment endure. Another important point Manson makes is that commitment involves risk. We may fail, lose, or encounter hardship, but these challenges are precisely what make commitment worthwhile. By facing difficulties, we learn, grow, and gain resilience. Commitment turns struggle into purpose, transforming obstacles into opportunities for meaningful progress. He also emphasizes that commitment is an active choice. It's not about blind loyalty or staying in harmful situations. It's about consciously deciding where to invest your care, energy, and focus. The moment we take this responsibility seriously, life gains clarity. Priorities become obvious, distractions fade, and decisions become easier. Ultimately, the paradox is clear. By limiting our options through thoughtful commitment, we gain freedom from chaos, indecision, and superficiality. We no longer float aimlessly, reacting to every impulse or expectation. Instead, we move with intention, grounded in values that matter. In the next part, Manson examines how we define success and failure, and why redefining these concepts is essential for living a fulfilling life.
Mark Manson challenges the conventional ways we define success and failure. Society often equates success with wealth, fame, and external validation, while failure is measured by mistakes, rejection, or unmet expectations. But these definitions, he argues, are shallow and often harmful. They set us up for a lifetime of comparison, disappointment, and unnecessary stress. He suggests a deeper approach. Measure success by your values, not by external standards. If honesty, compassion, and growth are your priorities, then living by these values is success, regardless of wealth, status, or recognition. Conversely, pursuing achievements that contradict your core values may bring temporary pleasure, but it ultimately feels hollow and unsatisfying. Manson also reframes failure. Instead of seeing it as something to avoid, he positions failure as a sign of engagement and progress. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn, refine, and strengthen resilience. People who redefine failure in this way no longer fear it.
They see it as an essential part of personal growth. For older adults, this perspective may feel liberating. Decades of life experience often teach that the achievements society celebrates, promotions, awards, or material possessions, rarely bring lasting happiness. In contrast, small acts of integrity, courage, and love have far greater impact and enduring value. Manson encourages readers to recognize this truth consciously. He warns against tying self-worth to outcomes. When our identity depends on being successful or avoiding failure, we are at the mercy of circumstances and opinions. This leads to constant anxiety and dissatisfaction. By separating self-worth from results and instead grounding it in personal values, we regain stability, peace, and confidence. Another key insight is that life is full of trade-offs. Pursuing one goal inevitably means letting go of others. Choosing what to care about and measuring success by what aligns with your values allows you to navigate these trade-offs with clarity. You stop trying to do everything and instead focus on what truly matters. Ultimately, redefining success and failure shifts the focus from external validation to internal fulfillment. Life becomes less about impressing others and more about living authentically. We start to value depth over breadth, meaning over appearance, and purpose over popularity. In the next part, Manson explores the role of love and relationships, why meaningful connections are both a source of joy and a challenge we must willingly embrace.
Mark Manson emphasizes that love and relationships are central to a meaningful life, but they are also sources of inevitable struggle. Many people believe that love should be effortless, that a perfect partner will solve all problems and make life consistently joyful. Manson calls this belief a myth and a recipe for disappointment. He argues that every relationship involves struggle, whether it's miscommunication, conflicting values, or personal flaws. The key is not avoiding these challenges, but choosing the struggles that are worth enduring. In other words, meaningful relationships require intentionality, patience, and shared values. Effort and compromise are not burdens, they are expressions of care and commitment. For older readers, this perspective often resonates deeply. Years of experience show that lasting relationships are built not on fleeting passion, but on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. Manson stresses that love is not a solution to life's problems, but a framework in which two people grow, learn, and face life together. He also warns against seeking relationships for validation or to fill internal voids. When we depend on others to make us feel whole, we set ourselves up for disappointment. True connection comes when both partners accept responsibility for their own lives while supporting each other in meaningful ways. This balance of independence and interdependence is crucial for happiness. Manson highlights the importance of boundaries in love. Healthy relationships are not about sacrificing yourself entirely or avoiding conflict. They are about respecting each other's needs, values, and limitations. Rejection, disagreement, and compromise are natural. The measure of a strong relationship is how these are navigated, not whether they exist. He further explains that love is a reflection of our values. When we align with partners who share our priorities, honesty, growth, kindness, or curiosity, the struggles we face become purposeful rather than draining. Challenges transform into opportunities for deepening intimacy and understanding. To fill internal voids. When we depend on others to make us feel whole, we set ourselves up for disappointment. True connection comes when both partners accept responsibility for their own lives while supporting each other in meaningful ways.
This balance of independence and interdependence is crucial for happiness. Manson highlights the importance of boundaries in love. Healthy relationships are not about sacrificing yourself entirely or avoiding conflict. They are about respecting each other's needs, values, and limitations. Rejection, disagreement, and compromise are natural. The measure of a strong relationship is how these are navigated, not whether they exist. He further explains that love is a reflection of our values. When we align with partners who share our priorities, honesty, growth, kindness, or curiosity, the struggles we face become purposeful rather than draining. Challenges transform into opportunities for deepening intimacy and understanding. And add a conscious choice rather than a magical fix. It's not about escaping discomfort, but about sharing meaningful struggles with someone who values the same things you do. By doing so, relationships become a source of growth, joy, and fulfillment, even amid inevitable hardships. In the next part, Manson explores how progress and growth depend on embracing responsibility, struggle, and continuous learning, turning challenges into stepping stones for a more meaningful life.
Mark Manson emphasizes that personal growth is inseparable from struggle. Life doesn't hand us meaning or mastery on a silver platter. It comes through effort, failure, and the courage to face challenges head-on. Avoiding discomfort may feel safe, but it prevents us from evolving and discovering what truly matters. He explains that most people want growth without struggle, seeking quick fixes, shortcuts, or effortless solutions. Self-help culture often promises transformation without effort, but real change requires commitment, patience, and resilience. Every obstacle is an opportunity to strengthen character, refine values, and gain wisdom. For older readers, this principle often aligns with life experience. Decades of work, family responsibilities, and personal challenges demonstrate that the hardest moments often produce the most valuable lessons. Pain, loss, and failure are not signs of weakness. They are the catalysts for insight, empathy, and strength. Manson also discusses the concept of iterative progress. Growth isn't linear. It involves trial, error, reflection, and adjustment. Each setback provides feedback. Each failure offers lessons. By viewing challenges as information rather than punishment, we can approach life with curiosity and persistence instead of fear. He stresses that struggle becomes meaningful when it aligns with our values, choosing what to endure deliberately, whether it's learning a new skill, maintaining a relationship, or taking responsibility for personal growth, transforms hardship into purpose. The same struggle can be draining or empowering, depending on whether it reflects our priorities. Another important insight is that embracing struggle fosters resilience and emotional maturity. By willingly facing difficulties, we reduce fear of discomfort, develop problem-solving skills, and build confidence in our ability to navigate life's uncertainties. Resilient people don't avoid challenges. They use them as stepping stones toward a richer, more fulfilling life. Ultimately, Manson frames growth as a conscious partnership with life's difficulties. Instead of lamenting pain or wishing for ease, we accept that challenge is inevitable and we choose to engage with it meaningfully. Struggle becomes not a burden, but a sign that we are actively shaping our lives rather than passively drifting. In the next part, Manson explores the importance of death awareness once again, this time as a motivator to prioritize what truly matters and live a life without regrets.
Mark Manson returns to one of life's most uncomfortable truths. We are all going to die. Rather than seeing this as a source of fear, he encourages readers to use the awareness of mortality as a powerful motivator to live intentionally and prioritize what truly matters. He explains that many people spend their lives chasing trivial goals, wealth, status, social approval, because they ignore the inevitability of death. We assume there's always more time, more opportunities, and more chances to get it right. But the reality is finite. Recognizing this scarcity gives clarity. What you choose to care about, how you spend your time, and whom you love become far more significant. For older readers, this principle may feel especially relevant. Years of experience often reveal that regrets center not on failed ambitions, but on moments not fully lived, opportunities for connection, authenticity, and growth that were postponed or avoided. Manson urges reflection. What would you do differently if you knew your time was limited? He also discusses the power of prioritization through mortality awareness. By accepting that our days are numbered, we are forced to confront our values. Superficial pursuits fall away. Relationships, meaningful work, and self-understanding rise in importance. Life's focus sharpens, and choices become more deliberate and aligned with what brings lasting satisfaction. Manson emphasizes that death is the ultimate teacher of responsibility. We may not control when or how it arrives, but we can control how we live before it does. Every decision to act courageously, embrace struggle, or invest in values becomes a conscious step toward a life well lived. Death awareness transforms urgency into wisdom rather than panic. He also warns against denial. Many people spend decades avoiding the thought of death, distracting themselves with busyness or comfort. But denial only prolongs anxiety and superficial living. Facing mortality allows for acceptance, gratitude, and a deeper appreciation of life's fleeting beauty. Ultimately, Manson reframes death not as the enemy, but as a guide for intentional living. By remembering that time is limited, we choose our struggles wisely, invest in what truly matters, and live with fewer regrets. This perspective transforms fear into clarity, loss into focus, and the finite nature of life into a reason to live fully. In the next part, Manson concludes his key lessons, tying together responsibility, values, struggle, and honesty into a roadmap for a meaningful and contented life.
As Mark Manson nears the conclusion of his philosophy, he brings together the core lessons: responsibility, values, struggle, honesty, and mortality. These are not abstract ideas. They are practical tools for shaping a life that is meaningful, resilient, and deeply satisfying. He emphasizes that life will always involve difficulties, setbacks, and uncertainty. Trying to avoid them leads only to frustration, resentment, and a sense of powerlessness. Instead, Manson urges readers to choose the struggles worth having. By consciously deciding what matters, we invest energy wisely, accept responsibility for our choices, and build lives aligned with our deepest values. Responsibility, Manson reminds us, is empowering. We may not control all external events, but we can control our responses. Choosing what to care about, embracing honesty, and facing uncomfortable truths frees us from the tyranny of blame and fear. Responsibility transforms life from a series of reactions into a deliberate journey. He also underscores the importance of values. Good values are internal, controllable, and enduring: honesty, growth, kindness, curiosity. Bad values like popularity, wealth, or superficial success depend on external validation and often lead to misery. Aligning our choices with solid values creates stability, direction, and peace of mind. Manson revisits the idea of mortality.
Awareness of death gives life urgency and perspective. It clarifies priorities and eliminates trivial concerns. By remembering that our time is limited, we focus on experiences, relationships, and actions that matter, letting go of the meaningless distractions that consume so much energy. Another key theme is struggle. Growth, fulfillment, and resilience are forged through challenges, not comfort. Failure, rejection, and hardship are not punishments. They are teachers guiding us toward deeper understanding and stronger character. By embracing struggle rather than avoiding it, we transform pain into opportunity. Relationships, too, are central to a meaningful life. Manson stresses that authentic connections require honesty, shared values, and a willingness to navigate inevitable conflicts. Love is not effortless, but when approached consciously, it becomes one of life's most rewarding and formative experiences. Ultimately, Manson's message is simple yet profound. We can't control everything, but we can control what we care about, how we respond, and the values we live by. By integrating these lessons, we craft a life that is authentic, intentional, and resilient. A life where struggles have purpose, honesty is liberating, and time is spent wisely. In the final part, Manson offers the concluding wisdom, a call to action for living fully, embracing mortality and accepting life's inevitable hardships with courage and clarity.
Mark Manson closes his philosophy with a powerful reminder. Life is finite, messy, and often unfair, but it is also rich with opportunities for meaning, growth, and connection. The key is choosing what matters, accepting what we cannot control, and living with courage and honesty. He reiterates that happiness is not about avoiding pain or eliminating struggle. In fact, struggle is unavoidable, and our satisfaction comes from choosing which struggles are worthwhile. By embracing responsibility, we reclaim agency over our lives. Every decision to face challenges consciously, rather than avoid them, is a step toward freedom and fulfillment. Manson emphasizes that values define our experience. Choosing good, internal, and controllable values, honesty, kindness, curiosity, growth, allows us to live meaningfully. Bad values, which rely on external validation or superficial success, lead only to frustration. Aligning our actions with true values transforms life from chaos into clarity.